Ja, hallo. Wir haben jetzt eine Phase, die wieder auf Englisch stattfinden wird. Hello, we are going to switch to English. And I welcome Dr. Volodymyr Ishchenko. Volodymyr, we agreed to do an interview with you. So, wir hatten uns geeinigt, dass wir da ein Interview machen. Also er wird keinen Vortrag halten, sondern ich werde 3 oder 4 vorbereitete und mit ihm abgestimmte Fragen stellen. Vielleicht ganz kurz erstmal zu deiner Vorstellung. Ich äh, mache das auf Englisch und tue die deutsche Vorstellung gleichzeitig hier in den Chat. Und Dr. Volodymyr ist, sorry, I'm not so good with multitasking. Okay, Dr. Volodymyr Ishchenko is a Ukrainian sociologist currently at the Institute for Eastern European Studies in the Freie Universität Berlin. His research focuses on protest and social movements, revolutions, radicalization, right and left politics, nationalism, and civil society. He published widely on contemporary Ukrainian politics, the Euromaidan revolution, and the ensuing war. He has been a prominent contributor to The Guardian, Al Jazeera, New Left Review, and Jacobin. He is the author of Towards the Abyss, Ukraine from Maidan to War from 2024. And he very recently, maybe some of you saw it, gave an interview to the Frankfurter Rundschau. I'll put the link of this here if people want to read it. And so I'll start with the first question to you, Volodymyr. And that first question is that in the interview that you gave to the Frankfurter Rundschau on the 16th, you spoke very critically of what's often considered civil society in Ukraine. You said that those who are organized in NGOs or media are not necessarily representative for the majority of the population. Perhaps you could describe your impression. How have positions in Ukrainian society changed after 4 years of war? How widespread is war fatigue and how openly it is discussed in public? Is there a growing discrepancy between official rhetoric and public sentiment?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this event, and thank you for the questions. So let me try to put it as shortly as possible. So of course the moods are changing, and you see various indications in the polls, in the behavior, the number of deserters from the army, the number of soldiers who go AWOL, absence without leave, the number of draft dodgers, which is counted in millions, and so on and so forth, and the quite critical discussions in social media and what we are discovering in the interviews with the Ukrainians who are staying in the country and so on and so forth. There are certain problems with this war fatigue narrative because it's kind of like based on the assumptions that I do not think actually working. So it's kind of like the story goes on that initially the people were enthusiastic about the war and they volunteered for the front, which is already a big exaggeration even about 2022. And then they become tired after 4 years of war, and now, well, Ukrainian elites, or maybe with the Western elites, are going to see that Ukrainians are tired, and so they are going to make peace, or otherwise there will be some massive peace movement in Ukraine that, European progressives could support, and in my opinion, it doesn't work like this at all. And I think it's very important to look at these dynamics about the war, not from the psychological perspective, how people are tired, cannot stand the war anymore, but from the sociological perspective. There are different groups in the Ukrainian society, and some groups are very much committed to the war because of their material interests and war because of their ideology. And they do see this war as existential, and this is indeed, it has never been actually the majority of the country, and this group is definitely broader than, well, nationalists. It's way more broader than those who are described as Ukrainian far right. It involves larger networks, groups which are organized in this civil society, patriotic networks. But at the same time, it's a minority. But they are committed to the war, and they would rather blame the West for not supporting Ukraine with weapons, with money. They would blame Trump, or they would blame indecisiveness of the European elites. But they may still go on with the war. The other question is about the other groups, the working class, the let's say poorer people who do not may not actually see their stakes in the war. However, they may continue to do what they're doing right now, just by inertia, because they've been fighting for 4 years. They've been surviving in Ukraine for 4 years, and uh, this kind of like behavior they become kind of like accustomed to it. And unless some major crisis is happening, it may kind of like continue for a long time. There are also like, well, dissenters. There are also those who criticize what is going on, and they may become even more like voiceful in the social media. But the problem is that they are not organized. There is no political force that could represent them, and well, hardly any politician who would say that, well, there is a need in a different way to do with our situation because of the various factors. And even even despite the fact that within the elites and even within the closer circle of Zelensky, there is apparently some understanding that, well, Ukraine cannot continue to fight the war as it is going on because it's just becoming like a catastrophe for the country, economic, demographic, political, on various fronts. There is kind of like dissatisfaction, there is resistance, but it's not organized. It's rather spontaneous. It does kind of like cover big groups of the society, but they do not have public or especially political representation, and that's the whole problem. And when the way it goes, it may continue for quite considerable period, and unless the well, some breakthrough happens during the negotiations between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, uh, or some major, well, military defeat on the front line that may like lead to the collapse of the Ukrainian army, and then well, certain political decisions by the Ukrainian elite. But it's not necessarily because of the well, appearance of some public opposition in the country.
Okay, thank you. I think the problem with sharing questions beforehand is you answered now all those questions we had prepared in one, which I think is very fine. But let me just add one other question that originally we had taken out. But is it, I mean, in case there is some kind of peace agreement leading to territorial changes, do you see any danger of that then the pro-war faction in Ukraine might start an uprising? I mean, we have seen something like that happening in Armenia when they agreed to an agreement and a swap of territories. Do you see any danger of that?
Well, uh, it is possible, right? But it's not something that is necessary to happen. Well, again, if you look at, for example, at the um, supposedly the most extreme fractions in the Ukrainian army, in particular connected to Azov movement, to the far right, with background in the actual neo-Nazi groups, they are more supporting ceasefire than the, let's say, supposedly liberal civil society, those well, Ukrainian voices speaking to the Western public sphere. Uh, why? Because well, the people on the front line actually understand better what's happening in the army, and they see that whatever they may wish about the ideology, the reality is very different, and very little prospects for Ukrainian victory, and that it's simply, well, it cannot continue like that. So the uprising should be led by certain force, right? And it should, in order for it to be successful, it actually requires not simply internal support, which exists. And as I said, there is a kind of like a core of committed group in the Ukrainian society who might well, fight for other years, and that would blame their compatriots or the Western elites for not supporting their cause enough. But the question is whether, well, would they be supported by some significant section of Ukrainian elites? Would they be supported by the Western elites? And so the reality, the chance for such a uprising exists. The chances for its success are much more questionable. Another question is what is going to happen in case the war continues for another year, 2 years, 3 years, and whether we are not going to see the well, complete disintegration of the Ukrainian society and politics because of the well, the reluctance of the big majority to continue participating in the war efforts. The risks of the certain destabilization may come from both sides.
Okay. Thank you very much.